All right, welcome to Reptile Fight Club. We're back again for another episode, and this time we've brought a friend, an old friend that we've had on here before, Dr. Billy Sveen. How you doing, man?
Pretty good. Happy to be back.
Good to have you back. Yeah. Oh, Chuck disappeared.
Oh, no.
Well, I guess nothing like that to start out a show and have your co-host disappear. But what's going on with you?
I'm doing well. Yeah. Enjoying the summer.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been pretty good summer for me as well. It's been really like rainy and mild for summers in Utah, so can't complain about that. Got some good herping going on, and can't beat that either. So
Excellent.
All around. You keeping busy?
Yeah. Work's been busy, and then young kid during the summer is busy too. They can't entertain themselves very well, so less work in that regard. So spending more time at home with them, but it's
nice.
Good.
How old are the
5 and 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got to keep them entertained, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a fun time though, for sure.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, mine are all teenagers and above, so
Yep.
I get a lot of feedback.
Feedback. That's a good word.
Oh yeah,
That's a good
last
word.
night was a doozy, but
Oh no,
it's been fun.
nice.
My youngest, she was just this little angel, and all of a sudden she's become a full blown teenager. So yeah, getting through the fun with that. So, but she's still a sweetheart, but the teenager brain damage sets in. And,
Yeah.
What do you do?
I like how much I forgot how much of an expert I was when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
On everything.
Yeah.
Like I said it with certainty. It was all true. I knew it to be. I was right as right could be. Yeah, not really.
So that Dunning-Kruger syndrome is strong with teens, right?
Yes. Yes.
You don't know how smart you are until you find out you're not very smart. But.
Yeah.
All right. Well, things good for you, Chuck? Besides your injuries?
Well, yeah. I'm good besides my injuries. I'm hobbling around, so.
Yeah. That martial arts, that'll get you. Huh?
Yeah. Well, yeah. My fault. My bad. Yeah. So
took the two youngest girls out herping the other night, and
nice.
We found a couple gopher snakes. They were crossing the road, so that was fun. And then came across a mother raccoon and her two cubs, and so she took off. Like, I don't know where she went or where she was, but she left the babies and bailed. And so we sat and videoed and checked them out for a bit. Yeah, they're pretty
cool.
Just little baby raccoons. So
maybe fun. She'd mama bear up on you and come after you or something.
I was watching my back because I didn't want her to sneak up and rabies attack or something. But.
I was charged by a raccoon as a teenager, and
really?
I'm not going to lie, I punted that fucking thing. Dude, it was full on.
Man, those are scary if they...
Dude. I was freaked out. Like, I just fight or flight, boom, kicked the thing when it got close enough. But it was tearing ass coming at me. I was scared.
If they're that bold, it's probably rabies or something.
Yeah, man.
So, you don't want to mess with rabies.
Dude.
Any virus that has a 100% mortality rate if untreated is not a good virus to get.
Yeah. And probably not fun to get treated once you've contracted it.
Have been exposed. I think it's gotten a little better. Maybe you would know better, Billy.
There's just some, I'm no rabies expert, but there's some interesting stuff about, if I'm remembering correctly, hypothermia and treating rabies in some people that have survived in Wisconsin, if I'm remembering correctly. And then doing more research about people, I'm going to butcher some of this, but in South America that have antibodies to suggest that they've been infected.
Huh.
With potentially a slightly different strain, but the idea that somehow some populations do survive. But yes, it is horrible disease.
Yeah.
Get your animals vaccinated and stay away from any animals that would be potentially infected. And if you get bit by a bat, by a raccoon in particular, get your injections. It's not worth messing around with.
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
Well
said.
said.
That's a scary one.
Yeah.
Well,
crazy trash pandas.
Yeah. I walked out to the reptile room and I got a nice surprise of another litter of blue tongue skinks. So
nice.
First time female. I wasn't sure if she was a female or not. I thought maybe it was a male, but yeah, it's nice to be surprised by that. I almost sold her last reptile show, so guess I'm glad I held on to her. And got the babies look nice. They're got some nice color on them right out of the female, so that's been good. The
cool.
Hosmer's skinks, the Hosmer spiny-tailed skinks are doing well. The little babies. Nice. I did lose one. It was kind of weaker when it came out, and so didn't quite thrive from the beginning. But the other two are going strong and looking good. One lost its tail tip though, so that was I don't know if I told that on here, but I didn't think that the Hosmer skinks could lose their tails, and so I was showing people the skinks, right? And so I reached down and grab one of them, and I kind of used its tail a little bit to pull it out and show it and whatever, and then all of a sudden the tail just came right off in my hands. I'm like, what the heck? I didn't think this could happen. And so I'm like, oh man. So I grabbed the other one, and I'm pulling the male up, and he starts flipping his tail, and it just comes off. Like he basically just flicked his tail at me. And so both my skinks are there with stumpy I'm like, I felt like the biggest idiot. Like, I'm just a moron here. I just didn't think the spiny-tailed Agurnias lost their tails. And I don't think like the Depressa and things, it takes a lot to get them to lose their tails, like pretty much biting it off or something for a predator. But I found out the sad way that the Hosmers can lose their tails, and that they readily do lose their tails if they're stressed out by a bunch of people in the reptile room. So
lesson learned.
PSA for y'all. So don't show off your shy Egernia to visitors unless they're not going to lose their tails. But yeah, those babies are sure cute though. Little spots on them and stuff. They're awesome. So
nice.
Pretty stoked to add another species to the list and of having bred in captivity. So they're pretty cool. And my California king snake eggs are going strong.
Nice.
So that's kind of a fun little thing. I'm excited to see them hatch out. That's I guess I can't really count that one because she came in gravid. So
right.
That's a little cheating there, but yeah, it'll be fun to see the little
It still counts. It's just cheating counts,
For sure. For sure. Yeah. So yeah, it's been cool. You see, Dustin Gran found a Massasauga in
no, I didn't.
Southeastern Arizona. So added. I think that was the last species for him or something. Now he's seen all the snake species in Arizona or something like that.
What's he gonna do? Move?
I guess that's his only choice. Now.
Start again. He's got to start again.
Yeah.
Yep. He's reset his list. Go find it all over again.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was just for croats or if that was for everything, like all the species. And I'm not sure if he's counting those lutes that he found in Utah because that was in Arizona. So
that's fair. That doesn't count. That's below the belt. Yeah.
That's
or above the belt. I don't know how you want to call that.
I guess it would be above the belt because it's
what I mean,
north of the belt.
But
right?
You get the drift.
Yeah. Exactly. What else is happening? Gearing up for the Tinley show. I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
If you haven't gotten your tickets for the Gecko Symposium on Thursday, do so. Go come see us talk about geckos. It should be a fun little deal. So I'm excited.
Is that like a separate? Is that can you buy those like on the website or how does that?
It's a separate website. Yeah,
okay. Like it's separate.
I probably should know the right name for that. But
I'm sorry if I just totally set you up because you don't know yet. But
no, I mean it is kind of loosely associated. I mean it's at the same place as the Tinley show.
Yeah,
but it's on Thursday, so the day before the vendor set up and all that kind of stuff. So I know a few people who are coming, kind of making a weekend of it, staying, going Thursday for the talks, and it's pretty much all day for the talks on Thursday. Let me get some more.
I'm definitely planning to go.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna drive down from Minneapolis.
Nice.
Yeah,
it'll be good to meet you in person then. That'll be
fun.
This is the time where I'm like, I should have gone. I should have gone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
there's
it's just it's not good. It's not good timing for me, but I still feel that when everybody's like starts making the plans, oh man, I'm gonna miss out. That sucks. You know.
I know what you're saying. So it's just the Gecko Symposium at NARBC. So I guess it is associated. So Tinley Park. So Thursday, October 5th, 2023, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. So full day of Gecko Madness. But
Gecko Madness. I like it.
There's a registration fee, but you can get a shirt if you register before September 1st. So get that free Gecko shirt. Should be some good talkers there. I don't know if I can include myself in that, but there's a lot of good.
You're a good talker.
I really liked. So we had one a few years back, and that was really some really cool talks. I don't know. I had some favorites in there, but I don't know that I'm out them. But I thought Frank Colachico gave a really inspiring talk about going out and herping and stuff. So that was kind of cool.
Would you say that was an earlier? Would you say that was an earlier on inspiration for you to get out and herp more?
Well, I'd already been out.
I mean, I'm saying, but like
maybe more in the United States. I think that kind of happened after that a little bit. But I'd already been kind of excited about going places. Yeah. I
don't mean like in general. I'm just saying like.
I bought into the whole mindset of like save your money from buying something, a new animal, and go out and use that money to go herping.
Yeah. Okay.
That was kind of one of his big lines was like, don't go buy that Leachianus. Use that money and go see where they're from. Or
I super agree with that.
Yeah. It's kind of a cool. And then he had a ton of pictures and showed all these adventures that he'd been on multiple continents and countries. And
that's the way to sell that.
It was pretty cool. So, yep. But should be some stuff. There's pretty some heavy hitters there, especially in the gecko world. You got Joe Hupp and Frank Payne, our old buddy Frank. So and Steve Sykes, and Philippe, the godfather of herpetoculture, is going to be one of the headliners, I'm sure. So that'll be awesome. But so go check it out. If you don't have your tickets, get some today. Okay. And then I'll also be speaking in Australia at the Hawkesbury Herp Society meeting the week after Tinley. So that's going to be a busy month of travel going from Tinley back home and then out to Australia.
Does that mean that we're going to go on another podcast hiatus, an episode hiatus?
I don't know. I might convince the guys to record with me in the car or something out. Herping. So I'm going to go herp with old Pete Birch, and I'm hoping some of the other guys can make it too. So we'll see who can.
Peter will be amiable to.
Yeah, I think he's in for sure. I think Chris Cupper's in as well, so that'll be fun.
All right, cool.
We're meeting up with Steve Crawford. Not Steve Crawford. Man. Steve, I'm sorry. What is it, Steve? Oh, my gosh, my brain is... I don't know how it works, but maybe Dr. Sven can help me with that. I am in trouble here, but... Yeah, it is Steve Crawford. I just second-guessed myself. Anyway, we're going to go meet up with him in South Australia and go find some more geckos and hopefully a carpet python. That would be nice to see one out there in the wild. But.
Yeah, I was. Oh man, who is it? Is it South Coast snake catchers?
You're asking me?
I know.
The one that Eric
he does like the rescue. Man, he pulled a really cool coastal out on video, and it was just like, oh, look, it's a Brisbane. It's a Brisbane coastal right there. There it is. That's the Brisbane coastal. So it was funny.
Yeah, there's some cool variability out of that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, because most of the coastals that he pulls out are, in the pretty blase blah. They're not. They're not. They didn't. That's the first one that I've seen that really had that nice kind of, caramely-ish, Brisbane-y look to it.
Mm-hmm. for sure. Yeah, I wouldn't mind keeping some Brisbane coastals down the road. Only had experience with the northern variety of coastal or jungle or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah. Whatever now. I mean, is it even a thing? Like, do people even care anymore once you drop a bomb?
I don't know if anybody cares at all about I see a lot of people not even going along with it. So
well, yeah, because it throws enough of a wrench in there, like lineage charts and all of this shit that they built. That's like, hey, it's cool, and this is what I'm talking about. It's a nice guide, but maybe it doesn't mean as much shit as you think it does, right? Like, it gives you a good roadmap of like how you got there, but it doesn't maybe taxonomically mean anything.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, I don't know. I was listening to Schmitty on his podcast, and he said taxonomy's fake. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think it's fake. I think you need a system to classify things, and it's just a system. It's just a system. But like any system, it's not perfect. It's like it was created by the federal government. It doesn't really work. It's not perfect, but it's kind of what we got, and it's been around long enough that we're not getting rid of it. So
the edges are murky.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, that's probably a good way to say it, right? Like I would say the stuff that's probably not in the edges is pretty well sorted out. But
and I think it depends on what system you subscribe to, what how you define a species, or how you the static or not static, but variable nature of things, and how things are in flux, and what right now is one thing may change and turn into something else. It's hard to pin it down, I think, for sure. And we're just kind of looking at snapshots and what things.
Well, and I think that's why if you're a taxonomist, you probably need to be an expert in. If you're a bird taxonomist, you need to be an expert in birds, because you have to have that context. Because you don't necessarily evaluate everything the same way. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, well, in this case, we look at this, this, and this because of these things. And in this case, we look at this, this, and this because of those things, right? Yeah. And so, I mean...
And I get it. Some groups evolve quicker than others. And so, you need... some differences,
so for so for me and you looking in, it's like, what the fuck are these guys are just making this shit? Like they're just pulling this stuff out of okay, I see maybe how they get there, but it's all over the place. Well, sure, because we're not experts.
Yeah.
You know what
the
I mean?
Consistency thing, though, that's what bugs me.
Yeah, and I agree. And
between different groups, it's just almost a different mechanism of classifications.
I don't know, man. I'm just saying that as a federal government employee, taxonomy gives me the same kind of vibe.
I think we need a word from our sponsor to get us out.
Mutton lifting power gloves. If you ain't got your mutton lifting power gloves, you're not shit.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Brought to you by Nick Mutton powerlifting gloves.
Mutton's choice powerlifting gloves. Come on, we got to get it right. We don't want to anger Mr. Mutton. We appreciate his sponsorship, though. It helps out.
You really threw the sponsorship thing in there real quick, so I just had to go. So my bad.
It works. Yeah. All right. Well, what's going on with you, Billy? What you got cooking lately?
I got my first clutch of poison dart frog eggs ever.
Nice.
Just earlier this week, so that was exciting.
Which species?
Dendrobates leucomelis. So a nice, real good starter poison dart frog.
Cool.
Yeah,
and
they're not. I got 5 eggs, and one was a dud, and the other 4 are clearly developing tadpoles. So pretty cool. Yeah.
I've only had experience with the Tinctorius, and
very similar to that.
Okay, it was just a long they just takes forever to hatch and morph into a froglet and stuff. So,
from what I'm reading and hearing from people I talk to, it's like about a couple weeks to hatch, and then a few months to morph.
Yeah. Just seemed like it took forever. I'm kind of an impatient guy, also. But yeah, that's cool. Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah. No, I'm excited about it. I love being able to, especially at this stage, like every day they look different.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty cool to see.
So they're moving forward and all that good stuff. Cool. Yeah. That's fun. That's what are your plans for kind of, are you looking to like look for holdbacks, or are you looking to sell them all, or
I have actually the person that sold me mine said that he'll take these and sell them, and so I trust him as a reliable person that will find good homes for them, and it will take, at least at this point, because it's the only thing that I'm breeding, make it so I don't have to try to find good homes for a really common frog. If I couldn't find them, I would just get rid of the eggs, or as what happens is the females just tend to eat them, like the other females eat them. So they're a pretty common frog, so if I don't have good homes for them, they don't need to be bred from my standpoint. But it sure is fun, at least so far.
Right. Yeah, it's such a balance, like a high wire act to, do I breed them? Do I just keep them? It is sure fun to see baby reptiles or amphibians, So I have a hard time. I would have a hard time if I couldn't breed them,
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like once you do breed them, then you're like, okay, now I got to find good homes for all these, and it becomes another sort of headache. So I end up holding on to stuff way too long anyway. So I get to hang out with it for a while. But
I'm horrible at doing ads and trying to move stuff out. So it's like I either need to chill out breeding or I don't know,
Yeah. Yep. That's the razor's edge we walk, I guess.
For sure.
It's nice to do a few shows every year, and I can kind of meet and talk with people face to face and kind of get to know them and make sure it's a good fit for them and things like that. So it helps alleviate a little bit of those concerns that you have, selling animals. But yeah, it's fun. Yeah, those baby skinks today were very cute. Yeah. I got a nice hatch rate out of my inlands as well, so that was good.
Nice.
Have those all hatched out and looking good. So waiting for their first shed, and
One female this year.
Yeah, just one female this year, just one clutch. So it's the way it goes, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
I think I only bred two females, and so one's fine.
That's probably exactly how you want something like that to go, right? Like. Breed them both, and hopefully one of them goes, but not both.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah. The pygmies look good. So
nice.
Sorry, I went back to my stuff. So sorry about that, Billy. So
no problem.
Dart frog eggs and the rest of the collection doing well.
Dart frog eggs. Yeah, I got a couple more of those Cameroon dwarf geckos.
Oh, cool.
So hopefully we'll have a pair or somewhere in there, and. But still probably a year or two away from something happening as far as actual eggs. Yeah. And then making plans to get my second species of dart frogs, getting the Phyllobates terribilis orange Blackfoot. Cool. Actually making plans to get them in the Chicago area when I'm down at Tinley is the hope.
Cool. What do those look like?
Really like bright orange. Really bold orange, and then they have black feet and kind of like a black like mask and jowls.
Okay.
But very orange, like striking orange.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're big. They're like.
Yeah. Aren't they one of the larger species?
Yeah, so they're like a big Tinctorius size.
Yeah.
And then they're stockier though.
Yeah, a little more round, a little more frog-like, Right?
And they've got reputation for being like the boldest of dart frogs. Cool. And depending on how you measure toxicity, they are one of the most toxic poison dart frogs. Yeah. And so that's whether it's the real story or just like a correlation that they're so toxic that like nothing scares them is kind of the way they get described in herpetoculture. And so, but like people just, it looks like open the door of the enclosure and stick their camera in there and they don't jump around. So it'll be cool if that ends up being the case.
Yeah. They have some of those at our local aquarium and
sure.
The big multi-species tank, that's like 12 feet long and 4 feet deep, and
sure.
you just sit and see how many you can find. I love the dart frogs. They're really fun to sit and watch. I kind of miss having them in my office, but
sure.
It's been a few years since I had those. But yeah, they're the teak toys. Anyway. But dart frogs are fun. Yeah,
they're super fun.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, yeah, hopefully you can get some nice ones.
Yes.
Terribilis. I guess they don't know they're not toxic in captivity either.
Exactly. Don't tell them.
Good they keep that bold nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, they're kind of like perfect. The whole dendrobatid complex, like perfect display pets, and for that reason, diurnal and hopping around in the bright green background with their bright jewel colors.
Yeah.
Can't really go wrong.
Yep.
No, sure. Definitely not.
Yeah. How do you have them set up? Your was it Luke?
Yeah. My Leucomelis. I mean, the other people won't be able to see, but it's just right here.
Okay. So
yeah. I mean, it's just it's like the back 2 foot wide, 18 inch deep, 2 feet tall, Euro style sliding glass doors. I made it myself.
Cool.
Troy Goldberg is kind of a DIY dart frog guru on YouTube.
Gotcha.
I had modified it slightly so it could fit perfectly in the corner of my desk, but I followed his instructions pretty closely.
Nice.
Yeah. I love those YouTube videos that kind of just walk you through it.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Like it really changed everything.
Yeah,
because then you can fill in the gaps by going on forums and finding like very specific little things. Yeah. Like compared to like I'll go on Dendroboard and see a build detailed from a decade ago, and the amount of time and details it takes you to read their steps, and then I still have questions versus you watch someone do it. And even if they don't say something specifically, like, oh yeah, it's overlapping on the outside, not the inside of the wood or of the glass, and it's like that's why that number's slightly different,
Yeah,
it all makes more sense.
Yeah,
when you see it,
I agree.
That's cool. It's fun too to kind of have a hand in creating that environment for them and kind of seeing the finished product and enjoying it.
Yeah, really customizable then, and then it feels empowering. Because truly with glass, especially if you have a glass cutter cut the glass for you, you don't really need tools. It's just silicone, and it's quite easy to do. And then, but then it gave me the idea to build the PVC enclosure for my ball python. And then I needed to borrow some tools for that and have my father-in-law help me quite a bit. but it was doable, and it was a fraction of the cost of buying it, and I could make it exactly the way I want it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Glass has kind of gone up in price a bit. Like
everything has.
Everything, yeah. So that's an everything problem.
I was looking at sliding doors for some cages, and I found some shelves like from IKEA that were the right size, and so I'm getting those to work. But it's the glass. Just buying cut glass was ridiculous. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So, yep. But, that's cool stuff. All right, well, we ready to do some fighting?
Yeah, what are we fighting about?
We're going to talk about kind of our responsibility as keepers, for the long-term care of our snakes, or, if it's cool to move them on after we've kind of they've lost our interest or they've run their course or whatever, however you want to say it, or whatever reason you have to move an animal on, as an adult or as something you've had for a long time. So what's our responsibility, I guess, in that regard? Does that kind of sum it up? You have anything to add to that, Billy? Or?
No, I think that sounds good. Yeah, when you get an animal, are you making a life commitment to the animal versus go ahead and rehome it as you wish?
Yeah. Sounds good. Well, I guess, Chuck, we're going to go ahead and do the first toss and see who gets to
heads.
Fight. It is heads. You gonna fight or are you gonna
I will let you fight this one.
Okay.
I have very strong feelings on this. I already know which side I would take, and this goes to my dogs, to my reptiles. And to me as a person, loyalty is a huge thing for me as a person. So I need to shut the hell up and let you guys talk about it.
All right, sounds good. All right, well, go ahead and call this one, Billy.
I'll do tails.
It's heads. I'm sorry.
Cool. No.
Let's see. I might go on the Chuck side and be like a long termer. I know you probably feel the same way, so I'm going to have you battle the other side.
Sounds good.
I'm going to take the easy way, I guess. Yeah, I figured you would be.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll let you go ahead and lead us out.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to argue that we're not obligated to keep these animals for their entire lifespan. Mm-hmm. So I think the first thing is reptiles live a really long time. So even with the best of intention, if you're getting frogs that live 2 decades, or snakes that live 3-4 decades, or turtles that live 8 to 10 decades, right? Yeah. You're opening yourself up for a lot of things changing, right? Like you're potentially going through being single to having a family, to changing jobs, to moving across the country, to retiring, to getting sick. There's all kinds of things that change over the course of multiple decades. And so you could have a very reasonable group of animals that you're taking care of that you, at some point, something's going to change and you feel like you have to move them on. And so you need to think about how to do that responsibly. As long as you have the ability to rehome them and find good homes for them, I think that sounds like an okay thing to do. Mm-hmm. That'll be my opening argument.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, things change. I guess the converse of that is also true. That if you're planning on getting a certain reptile species, you should first off know how long it's going to live, and you should try to plan and schedule or make sure that you can keep that animal for the entirety of its lifetime. And so, that's tricky because a lot of reptiles kind of fall under the impulse buy. I know you've shown that not all keepers are that way, right? You have a very good mindset and planning, and I really like what'd you call them, your theses or your
my tenets.
Your tenets, yep, yeah. So I think that needs to be more widespread in the hobby, where we don't just buy a baby reticulated python because we can house it for now. We need to look, maybe even just a couple years into the future when they get almost unmanageably large, are we going to have a room size enclosure for the snake? Not just wishful thinking like, oh yeah, I can probably do that by the time it's big enough. So I think if we had more conscientious planning when buying any animal, I think it goes for our furry friends as well, but that we have that in mind when we're making a purchase, to be able to keep that animal for the rest of its life, because things could change and maybe nobody wants that animal. What are you going to do then? It's really difficult to find a good home because nobody wants your giant sulcata or your giant reticulated python, and it's just going to kind of languish away somewhere or be in a rescue or something like that, and that's never a good situation. So I think more conscientious purchases and more planning. I don't have anything against somebody getting a reticulated python or a sulcata tortoise, but they should have that at the forefront of their mind. How am I going to keep this animal for 20, 30, or 100 years, in the case of the tortoise, potentially. So that's, I guess, how I'd counter
sure.
initially.
Yeah. And I think there's a difference between people getting an animal not knowing what they're getting, or people getting an animal and saying exactly what you said, like, oh, I'll put them in a 4-foot enclosure now, and then by the time they're 6 foot, I'll be able to get a 6 foot enclosure. By the time they're 12 foot, I'll find a 12 foot enclosure. And they don't actually know how they're going to do that while they're, living in an apartment or still living with their parents or whatever, right? Yep. Versus, like, I think about myself, and I've been keeping reptiles for a couple decades now, but never at very high quantities. And so as I'm looking around thinking about what I want next, there's a whole bunch of question marks because I've never actually experienced them. Mm-hmm. And so unless I go and have an opportunity to be with someone locally that has those things, at some point I have to say, you know what, I know how I'm going to care for this animal. I know how much space that they are going to take. I know what I know what they eat and how I'm going to provide for this animal. And then I get it, and I'm probably going to get one to start with, but then I might get a couple pretty quickly because I'd want to breed them and I want to make sure I'm sourcing from good places. And then if they're not the most interesting for me, which is super hard to tell before you get into it, and I get, so like I'm thinking about like these poison dart frogs I'm getting, I'm pretty confident about that. But then because I love the ones I already have, and these have slightly different characteristics that I'm really looking forward to. Mm-hmm. Versus, if I get thumbnail dart frogs, which are those tiny little ones, if they really freak me out because every time I open the enclosure, I'm afraid they're jumping out, and it's stressful every time. 2 years into that, am I obligated to keep them for the rest of their life versus finding another person around me that would want them? Mm-hmm. And then I think about some of the other gecko species that I'm interested in getting, and I hear people say such great things about them. Like I'm specifically thinking about like Urodactyloides and Goneurosaurus geckos. So the like chameleon geckos and the cave geckos is what often they're called. And I'm hoping to get some or both of them over the next few years. But I've never had anything exactly like those. I guess I've had leopard geckos, which are kind of cave gecko-like. Mm-hmm. But so what if they don't interact in my room, in my limited amount of space that I have, the way I thought they would? It seems like if they're not bringing joy to me, and they could bring joy to somebody else because they're a species that clearly lots of people like, why am I therefore obligated to take care of them forever?
Yeah, and I guess the sad part of that is that human nature usually, once you lose interest in something or they're not doing it for you, their care starts to decline in a lot of cases, and so then you see cases of animal neglect or the kind of the dark side of the hobby, I guess you'd say. But so yeah, I definitely
it's kind of counterintuitive, right? The more of the blase blah, like if I'm not into it, move them on, may actually be the more empathetic way to be with the animal. You know what I mean? It's kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not saying you're necessarily obligated to keep a species you don't like for the rest of your life, but when you're purchasing an animal, that's kind of when you're saying, can I keep this for the rest of its life? If I love it and it's
a distinct
really doing
question.
it for me. Yeah. And so I guess that kind of forethought and things. Because, a lot of things look really cool. And I've heard Owen talk about, he likes all the crazy stuff that people get sick of or something. But I've heard maybe it's Eric saying, he didn't enjoy keeping like ring pythons or white-lip pythons, that were, liked it really wet and had, were kind of feisty, like bite a lot and they crap and, pee all over you every time you pick them up. All the fun stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, all the fun stuff.
It's like, you may not know that when you're just looking at Instagram and you see a beautiful white-lip python with all its iridescent, on display, and you're just like, oh, that's a cool snake. I would love to keep one of those. So I think it's good to, like you said, to visit with people who keep them and maybe even go over and see them kind of in action. Say, hey, can you pull this snake out and let me handle it or let me see it? That's not always possible, and I think
And even if you know the reputation, like you did the homework, it's different when it's your 24/7. Like it's always your responsibility.
Yeah, and say you're in a dry environment like I am, where keeping a thing on a moist substrate is very difficult because things dry out so quickly, especially during the summer when you have to run the AC unit and it's just pulling all the moisture out of your reptile room. Then you got to kind of counterbalance that with other ways, foggers or humidifiers or whatever, but. It can be kind of a pain. Sorry, Chuck, you were going to say something.
Oh, no. I was just saying, kind of to maybe to your side, Justin, I my cattle dogs, which isn't reptiles, but they're, they're kind of high strung. They're, they're not an everybody dog. Right. And I like them, and I there's aspects I really like about the dog, but I recognize that they're, just being a herding dog, they're high strung. They, they can be nippy. There are a lot of things that, like, if I was just like, this isn't working for me, move them on, they may not have a good outcome because they're, if I'm not willing to, so I like the dog, I'm willing to take maybe some of the more negative aspects of the dog on, because I know if I don't take them on, probably no one else is going to take them on either if I give them up. So I'm probably the last line for that, kind of goofball, neurotic dog that just is bred that way. That's how they are, Yeah. I got one cattle dog that runs for his kennel when he hears a walk, and I got the other one who freaks out and just can't wait to get outside. So, like, I literally have both spectrums, and that's totally cattle dog. Both ends of that is totally cattle dog. So anyway, just, kind of to your point, like, how do you let something like that go when
Right. Yeah.
Just like anything pretty much that I got from Carrie and Todd that's absolutely psychotic. And I'm like, man, if I move this on, somebody's really, they'll bite the shit out of them, and they're going to be like, I don't like this, So kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that could go along with that. And of course, if things are going to go downhill for you in regards to that, you're not interested in, definitely move them on.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't let them languish in your house just because you feel obligated or anything.
Yeah, unarguably so. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's definitely to Billy's side, but just that, and you can't know everything about them in the beginning, or if they're going to work in your situation, but give it a best faith effort. Don't just
I think you have to have your goals and expectations set very, very strongly. How far are you willing to go? How and evaluate all of those things before you actually put the wheels of problem in motion for yourself by getting the animal.
Yeah. I think that goes for a lot of things. Yeah. I remember one guy back in the day that was, I think he got the first albino carpets or head albinos in the country. He produced the first, do you remember that guy? He lived in Utah, and I can't remember his name. Anyway, I heard so he produced an albino. Everybody was excited, and then he tried to sell it for big money. Then he sold the parents, and then he got into falconry the next week, just completely bouncing around.
What's that guy's name,
hobby
man?
To hobby. It was crazy. It wasn't Chris Proctor, was it? Was it Chris?
Yeah,
Proctor?
it was Proctor. Chris Proctor.
So,
good job.
Yeah, I met the guy. He was a nice enough guy, but just kind of bounced around from.
Well, but
hobby
and, how some people
short attention span or something. It's kind of crazy. And I guess, like you said, that's kind of the opposite of my personality. And I think one other aspect is as a hobbyist, we kind of have an opportunity to have kind of a flagship species that may not be popular, may not be that mainstream, that people may not even know exists, but you can kind of popularize and make them well known, and maybe even kind of be kind of a reservoir for that group of animals. Maybe they're imported heavily, and all of a sudden the imports stop, and then all of a sudden you're the only person breeding them. So I think there's some aspects, and I think it was Yasser that the first one that I kind of noticed making that plea is like, work with something that's less appreciated or that's, not worth any commercial value, but that you find cool. I think that's a really cool concept, because I think we get into this monoculture aspect of herpetoculture where everybody just wants to keep ball pythons, boas, leopard geckos, crested gecko, all the same things, and then it just becomes a little bit boring. You go to a reptile show and it's just, you don't know when one table ends and the other begins because it's all the same stuff. So, if you have something really cool that catches people's eye or that nobody's working with, that's kind of, variety is the spice of life. So,
I kind of hope I see a little of both at a reptile show, sure. Right? Like,
yeah, and I guess they have their novelty of new morphs or different combinations or whatever, and that floats some people's boat a lot. And I used to get a little more excited about that, but I'm kind of finding myself being less interested in all the genetic mutations and combinations than I was a decade ago. But
I think the other side of people with unusual or rare species as breeding projects is if it's not working for you, right? So say you have those white-lipped pythons and you can't get them to reproduce in your settings, probably the best thing for the survival of that species in herpetoculture would be to move them on to someone who is doing a better job with them, and let them have an opportunity to use them as a different line and keep the genetics good, instead of saying, I picked these out and I'm just going to give it another 4 years here,
Yeah.
Are you saying that reptiles are not a nut to be cracked? What? How dare you, sir? How dare you? Sorry, on behalf of all the listeners, I had to say that.
Yeah, I mean, we have a good friend, Keith McPeak, that just moved on his Bolinai that he had for many years, prime pairs that were doing great for him otherwise, but just they just weren't reproducing for him, and so he moved those on to somebody who would be able to maybe have a bigger group or whatnot, and he got some lanthanotus, some of the earless monitors, and cool. Is playing with those now. So I can definitely see, like, for the good of the species, finding somebody that may have more success or may have a better chance of doing what you might not have been able to do. But and definitely Keith gave it his best effort and was passionate about it for a very long time, and still is passionate about it. He still cares about the species, and I think that's kind of the main reason he moved those on, was exactly what you said. So I would agree that's a good reason to move something on, especially if you got an animal just for Instagram likes. You're a YouTuber and you had an extra $10,000, and so you got a Bolinai or two, and just have them for the shock and awe of I spent $20,000 on a pair of snakes, not because you really care about the species, but you want the likes.
That's probably not a very good faith purchase.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so moving those on to somebody who can't afford them, maybe can't afford a $20,000 pair of snakes, but would potentially reproduce them and maybe make them more available is definitely a noble cause.
Expensive bunch of likes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's tricky. I mean, that's anytime something goes up in price like that, it's really a tricky thing. It becomes once money's involved. And I think that's, maybe, I don't know, I guess that could work either way, right? Either side. If the animals are worth a lot of money, and you can reproduce them and keep them healthy and happy and give them the space and care they need, you're going to be able to move those offspring and potentially make money that will perpetuate your hobby and allow you to care for them even better.
Get him!
It wouldn't be a show without an interruption from Ruby, right? So,
apologies.
So, I think, there's definitely those aspects of it. If you can be successful with a species that maybe other people have a hard time with, or that you've kind of dedicated your time and effort and focus to, you can definitely make that a good thing for yourself as well as others that are interested in it. And if you have that excitement for it, it's kind of a contagious thing, right? You get excited about a species and you're gung-ho about them and talking about them all the time, putting out content or whatever about this species. Other people tend to notice that, and I think there's some really good examples of that in the hobby for sure. Frank Payne, he's really good at kind of getting those lesser seen, lesser known projects and making them appeal to a wide variety of people. So, I think there is some benefit to kind of having those long-term projects, because there is a lot of fluctuation in the market too, where like I said, some things might be coming in as imports, and then all of a sudden all that stops, and then everybody goes, wait, I want one of those, and now I can't get it, and now they're 10 times the price. Who has these? And if nobody cared about them and nobody was thinking about them, then I get it. Trying to compete with import prices can be maddening, and that's not very fun. But I think for the most part, people will pay a little extra or a lot extra for a captive bred animal versus a wild caught, especially with the prices some of these wild caughts are coming in under. But so I guess I make that point.
Hard to argue with some of those. I would say, since you brought up Frank Payne, I heard him on the Reptile Entrepreneur podcast this week, talking about the projects that it's good. It's good. You should listen to it. It's Bill Strand with the Chameleon Academy. Uh-huh. It's one of his kind of side podcasts.
Oh, cool. I like that.
So Frank Payne talking about his criteria for the animals that he chooses, and then how he decides to move on projects, which I thought was really interesting. And so describing in particular, and he has very different objectives than me, for example, where don't really care about making money on these animals, and if eventually I make some and could even cover the cost of some of my supplies, that'd be amazing. But that's not even really my goal. Yeah. Versus it's how he provides a big chunk of income for his family. But he was talking about having his spiny iguanas, I think, banana pectinata. Iguanas, and how much space they took up, only having a few pairs, and deciding that he needed to move them on so that he could continue with some of the smaller species that he was doing. And talking about beauty anoles being one of the other, slightly bigger species, but being able to fit dozens of them into the same amount of space that he wanted to have those iguanas in. Yeah. And so he moved the project on, and he moved it on, together for someone else to use, instead of chopping it up and profiteering on it as much as possible.
Yeah.
And so to me that seems like a really good example of someone I have no doubt in my mind he knew exactly what he was getting into, and then a couple of years in decided this isn't working, this isn't the way forward, and then described taking in a few other animals where he gets a few pairs in to figure out which ones are going to be the next big projects. And so not very many people are going to be Frank Payne's, not many of us are going to have a real full-time job. But I think in a smaller scale, because I was thinking about it, if I get something and it's not exactly what I was hoping for a few years in, the ability to move it on somebody else, I think you said it earlier, the difference between getting it knowing the possibilities and getting it and knowing everything exactly and how it's going to be for you perfectly.
Yeah. I think maybe a little different twist on that too is thinking about once you buy into a project, you usually get them as juveniles, and sometimes if you buy a group, you can get a pretty good deal or something. But usually when you sell an adult animal that's potentially reproductive and ready to go, you're probably going to lose money, in some way, or you're not going to get what you think you probably should get out of that animal. So I think a lot of people, and sometimes that kind of messes up the pricing structure, for whatever that's worth. I guess I don't know how excited I am about pricing structures at all, but a lot of times if people are getting out of adult projects and they have to sell them for less or have to sell them quickly or something, they're usually going to take a loss or sell it to the highest bidder or the first one to ask for them, and so that can be somewhat problematic as well. And so if I guess keep that in mind if you do have to move on a project. Maybe don't expect that you're going to get every last cent out of them, and don't expect that, everybody's going to be excited to buy adult animals, especially if you haven't been able to prove them out. Now, I know some people can take animals I've got a friend that can take animals like that and he'll reproduce them in the first year, when the person had them for 15 years and couldn't get any offspring out of them. So some people just kind of have that Midas touch, I guess, when it comes to certain species or animals in general. But, I think don't just dump them on the market. Don't just put them in your local classifieds and look for the first person with a checkbook to show up. Make sure you're trying to do good for the animals, find a good home for them, find somebody who might be successful with them, even if it means taking a little bit more of a loss.
Potentially, this is more of a point for you, but potentially keeping them together too. Versus, depending on how big the group is, like if it's just a trio of something that's relatively rare, trying to find someone that can take a trio versus like if you're getting out of your collection of like locality king snakes and you got 50 of them or something, maybe dividing them up in ways that are reasonable, but still that so projects can continue. So you don't break projects and break lineages. Even if you could get, 20% more money if you were to sell them individually to the highest bidder. It's probably not the right way to do it.
Yeah, that is kind of, it seems like there is kind of a lot of that Noah's Ark type keeping, and I'm guilty of that to some extent, where I have small groups of a lot of species rather than one large group of, I guess I would compare that with like Ron St. Pierre, where he buys 30 of a certain species and sets up a large group and sets them up in large enclosures outdoors in Florida or something like that, compared to getting just a pair or two of a certain species. So I'm definitely guilty of that. But yeah, these large projects where I do have a few of those large projects where I have multiple animals and multiple breeders of the same species, and I want to have a reservoir of those as well for myself. So I need to move, or I have moved a lot of those on. So in case some catastrophic event like a fire takes out my whole collection, I can have a source of those in the future. I've produced enough that they're out there, and hopefully people are breeding them. But there is no guarantee. I always go back to Bert Langewerf, and when he passed away, and that I think they were trying to sell the whole his whole Agama International ranch as the property, the lizards, everything together, and I don't think I think somebody bought it, but I don't remember if they kept like certain species or if those went somewhere else. But because all of a sudden Australian water dragons kind of disappeared. You had a few people that are producing them pretty well, but for the most part, like, he was the main guy for the Australian water dragons, and I get it. Everybody has different ideas of what and I don't think he wasn't selling them for very much per animal, and so people thought, well, you can't make money on that project, so I'm going to pass. But I guess that being hobbyists, we have kind of a little bit of a more flexibility in that regard. We don't have to make a ton of money. You know, most hobbies don't make any money. They cost a lot of money.
Yes.
And so, you know, we're kind of fortunate in one way where we can kind of recoup our losses by selling some offspring to good homes. But, you know, I think if we have more of that attitude of like, this is not a business, this is a hobby, and, you know, I want to do the best thing I can for the animals that I choose to keep and, you know, move towards that goal. That's probably a good way to do it. And I think a lot of us got kind of caught up in the, you know, the giant rows of Rubbermaid, you know, tubs and the Brian Barczyk, you know, warehouse idea of being a reptile breeder. And you know, granted, there may be a place for that as far as supplying pet shops with a large number of, you know, captive bred animals. I guess there could be some positives to that, but for the most part, getting everybody excited about being a giant rack breeder, you know, the Walmart of reptiles is probably not a good thing. And
looking back on it, it's pretty grotesque, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I guess hindsight is 20/20. So
worse always.
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, I was a little excited about that. I admit it, you know, seeing that and being like, wow, that's a lot of snakes. How cool is that? You know, that's a business right there. But then, you know, as you grow and learn, and you're like, wait a second, maybe that isn't a great thing to do for everybody, you know.
Yeah.
But like I said, you know, some people
certainly shouldn't have been the model dream for, you know, keepers. Like, I don't know how that got to be we want everybody. It was the pyramid
scheme, right? It was like, you can make money too. Yeah, just buy these two and put them in a tub, and soon you'll have 30, and you can sell them for this much and make this much money, and you too can be a rich reptile breeder. You know, it's kind of how they sold us on the dream, I guess, or that nightmare, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So. Yep, that's a tricky one, I guess, is when you have to move on, you know, and you see a lot of like divorce or, you know, having to sell off collections to kind of settle that, you know, in a divorce. And it's really sad to see some really cool projects kind of go down the tubes pretty quick when that happens. So I don't know what the answer is, but, you know.
So are you saying that if you would have moved some stuff on strategically earlier, you would have saved the project?
That's the question, you know. And I don't know what I mean, because I guess people would look at Burt Langworth and say, "Oh, he's the guy. He's doing it. I don't need to do it.
Right?
There's no incentive. I can't."
Different problem that I don't know what to do about. But
yeah, that's a tricky.
Because it's not the case that he wasn't selling tons of dragons.
No. Yeah,
he sold tons of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They were out there, and I guess, you know, I'm sure some of the offspring did survive, and those are the people that are producing them today.
Sure.
And you know, I talked to Ron about that. He was breeding them for a while, and he's like, they just weren't my thing, so I moved them on. You know, so he could have been producing. He could have been the next Bert in that regard.
And also, if it's not your thing, and it's not really a thing at the time, it's easy to see where, you know, they just disappear because people are like, well, I can't sell these or you know, they're not really my thing or whatever. But it you know, all of a sudden it's like, you know, where do they go? Magic,
I want these now. I really want these.
But
that's hard.
You know,
for sure. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of reptiles that I would love to keep, you know, but I've learned that it's so much better to limit yourself and just really be really selective and really sure of what you want, and that you're going to be able to house them properly and all that good stuff from the get-go. It's a lot easier to do it at the front end rather than the back end, and have a large collection. And all of a sudden, I feel bad. You know, I'm keeping them in a rack, and now I need to move them to cages, but I've got to buy a bunch of cages or find room to set them all up, or, you know, move on some and get rid of some that I really like, even just to give them a better home, things like that. So I think that that can be a tricky thing. So, you know, if you're just getting into it, I mean, it's a real big temptation just to dive in and get all that you can as fast as you can, and those kind of things. And that's where Billy's tenets come in, and we need to kind of do it with forethought and with planning and things like that.
I think if you can maintain some of the flexibility in your life, however that is, whether that's just keeping a couple animals long term, one or two, and just this is what I like, and this is what I'm keeping, or if you do it with a modest sized collection that maybe you're moving a little bit more often as picking stuff up, taking stuff that you're not interested in, depending upon, how you're kind of doing it. I think one of my biggest things that I feel is the weight of being tied down by a big collection. And like with all the great points that you guys brought up about, mortality and just how things change year to year, much less decade to decade, and all of that, it's such a good idea to travel light. And I think that you can still travel light and still, kind of have it either way, right? Like, isn't that the awesomest part? And like, if you want to go out herping, you don't have a huge collection to take care of, and you're free to do that. Or if you want to fly to Australia, you're not burdening your family or whatever. You know what I mean? I think there's just some real benefit to that. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah. No, I think it's something I've been thinking about a fair amount. Like, to speak from my own experience, so I had not a big collection, like a half a dozen or so animals in high school, and going off to college had to rehome most of them. And so and thinking back on it, I don't know if I did a good job, right? Like, I put in like a Craigslist ad, and someone came by and took all my geckos, and I have no idea what happened. And then throughout like 4 years of school and then 10 years of medical training, I knew I didn't want to do that again. And so I just had my one bearded dragon, and then when he died into his, I think it was around 14, 15, then I got my ball python that I still have. And so now it's just been these last 2 years that I, finally am done with training, got my first real job, bought a house, and have like space to actually do something. And it's like, I have all this opportunity, but how do I actually want to do it? And I'm doing it much differently than 16-year-old me would have done it. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, if I make a wrong decision and I get, like God forbid, a tortoise, like, do I have it? Like, now I'm like, it's for my children, so it's a thing I'm thinking about, of like, if I get something that's not, despite all of my learning about it, not the thing I want, what do I do with that? And what's the obligation?
And I mean, we do learn the hard way a lot of times, like you said. And I think, our good friend Steve Sharp, he got out of keeping entirely because he couldn't, kind of get over that, the feeling of I'm putting, these animals are having potentially having a miserable life because of me. I'm bringing them into the world by breeding these animals, selling them to people who might let them languish, or so that aspect of it just really weighed on his soul. So
I mean, even if you're keeping great care of your animals, if you're moving some along, whether that's rehoming or selling offspring, that's out of your control.
Mm-hmm. And don't get it twisted. Life is out of our control. I mean, there's so much is that out of our control that we would like to say that we establish some control over, but we don't. So, I mean, I think you act ethically, you act morally, but in the end, like, you kind of got to be real with, like, shit happens.
Yeah. Well, and two, in the wild, I mean, how many are making it, out of the first few days of life? A lot of things are getting eaten pretty quickly or having a savage end, that they're meeting or a long, drawn out, prolonged. I mean, I'm sure we've all seen those animals in the wild that are just barely hanging on and they're going to die soon. And, that it's tragic, but life's pretty rough, So I think in a lot of ways, animals in captivity have it pretty good. And sometimes we kill them with kindness. We're giving them too much and too good of a life. And that's not great for some reptiles either. So, yeah, I mean, the ethics aside, that's a big can of worms for sure. But, I definitely think we need to consider those ethics and think about those things when we're taking on and supporting life in our garage or in our house or whatever, So that's definitely a consideration to be made. Well, we covered it. Anything else you can think of, or any other points you wanted to make? Or I think we discussed some pretty good topics, but
I think there's also, this is a point for you, not for me. So switching sides, the idea that the stress of moving an animal, too, and so paradoxically, it does seem like sometimes that's the stress that makes them breed. But clearly, them leaving the situation that they feel is their home environment is stressful to a lot of them, and so I think that's we're not dealing with inanimate merchandise. We're dealing with living creatures, and so I think that's another reason to have it your mindset when you're going into getting them that you're getting them for their natural life.
Yeah, and I mean that is kind of a paradox, right? Some animals do much better once they're shipped somewhere else, and that stimulates them to eat better or breed or whatever. Yeah. It's kind of crazy, and
they go into like a fight or flight type situation or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, and even poor Chuck trying to, with the helmet hair, is moving him to a different cage could potentially reset him for 5 years or something. So it can be rough, those moves.
Stupid things.
Sorry,
no, it's I cannot express how disappointed I am. And it's like, what do you do, man? Like, you can't even get mad about it. It's like you're just lucky to have what you have. Shut up. Enjoy, you know what I mean? So it's like, but it's frustrating. You thought you really thought you had, made a breakthrough, and now it's all like, did it? What was that? What happened? Do you go backwards? Do you continue to go forwards? Like, I don't even know which way to go now. So
yeah, all those questions are like, is this the reason? Is this the, it's just hard. It's almost impossible to figure everything out and, get into the mind of those animals. And maybe some people are better at that, and they that's why they're so successful. I don't know, but I definitely don't fall into that category most of the time. So, yeah.
I'm not ready to move them on because I feel unsuccessful. So we're not there yet.
Well, and you've got an army of babies. Pretty soon you're going to be just swimming in them, I'm sure. With captive breds, but
we'll see. We'll see.
Well, I really think that getting in that mindset of taking on a new species, whether you have to move it on or not, but just having that attitude of, I'm going to do the best I can, and I'm going to give it the best life possible, and I'm going to help the offspring that come as a result of these animals get the best life they can too. So, and that's not always the easiest thing, but if we make a concerted effort and strive to really do these animals justice and give them a good, happy life, then we can't do much more than that, I think.
I agree.
All right, well. That was a good discussion topic. Thanks for bringing that on and coming back and fighting with us again. It's a lot of fun.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me.
Of course.
Any cool? I mean, you put me onto that podcast. Was it Reptile Entrepreneur? Favored that in my podcast app.
It's good.
I'll have to give it a listen. Yeah, Bill Strand, he's done some good shows. That I think Rob was the one that turned me on to the Chameleon Academy podcast, talking about the fogging.
Those episodes are amazing.
It was mind blowing, really cool stuff. So that was fun to listen to, and I need to go back and listen to them again, and maybe put some of those things into practice or something.
Yeah,
I
feel like there's a whole bunch of niche podcasts, and you find the ones that you like because you're also in that sector.
Yeah.
I don't have any chameleons. I don't know if I'll ever have chameleons, and I listen to most of those podcasts because the way he describes things I find really interesting, and his process I really like a lot.
Yeah. Another one I listened to recently that really got the wheels turning was Will Philippek. He was on Eric and Owen with Eric and Owen and talk. Well, I guess it was Eric and Rob. Rob's a bright guy, so it's always fun to listen to him on the podcast. But talking about what were they talking about again? Whether you could breed pythons year round, and that that got kind of some questions and some ideas maybe for some future fight clubs or something. Just talking about thinking about those topics, and we had have we had Will on here? If we haven't, I think I was talking to him about coming on, so we need to get him on here. He's a bright guy, so he's fun to listen to his.
Make it happen, Julinder.
I know. But I don't know if you guys. I listened to the Venom Exchange Radio podcast recently. Phil and Nipper, those guys are great. So it was fun to hear Nipper's recap of the Utah trip. And
nice. I'll have to check that out.
It was fun. So it was a good trip. That was hard to beat. We found all the rare stuff, which was when you're finding a lyre snake and a speckled rattlesnake, but you don't see a gopher snake in Utah. That's a weird trip.
That is a weird trip.
Pretty epic, but and two Gila monsters to boot.
An awesomely weird trip.
Yeah, I'll take that trip.
Yeah, that's a good trip.
Year, so. Yeah, and man, the number of mountain kings that are being found in Utah this year is incredible. I've got a friend that's found like a dozen of them, man. It's like crazy. I need to find one.
For real.
Rubbing salt.
It's like rubbing it in your salt in your wound, man.
To be fair, I've only gotten out to look for them a couple times this year. So.
Yeah, see, it all comes back to.
Yeah, and they live in he lives within their habitat, within their range, so it's a lot easier to go. So he's doing you a favor. He's like, looky here. So you're like, oh man, I'm gotta go, right? yeah. It's hard,
yeah.
But it is what it is. I've gotten out locally and seen quite a few of the rubber boas, which is fun to see, and some other things. So I guess I can do my looky here too. So
that's awesome.
If anybody cares about rubber boas, but what cool weird snakes they are. So I don't know, any other cool things out there.
I've been enjoying. Speaking of another animal group I don't have anything of, but for turtles, the Let's Talk Turtle podcast.
Oh yeah.
Ryan
DeMoss.
And Tom, their passion is infectious.
I know, right?
And then hearing about building outdoor enclosures, and then the intersections of preservation and conservation, and the stuff. I do think tortoise people are doing it a little differently, and so I think there's a lot of things that we could learn from them, and so I've learned a lot by listening to them talk.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we get in that mindset. We need to stick to our niche and just focus on the things that talk. But once you start crossing the streams and looking at other types, you see a lot of parallels, and you see a lot of things that you can benefit from, and that you can actually learn from and grow from. And then you can hold conversations with those people too, because you know a little bit about tortoises now because you're listening to these podcasts, and you can carry on a conversation with somebody who may have disparate interests compared to your own. So it's kind of fun. I really like that. We've had Ryan on here a couple times, and he's a good one to fight with.
He's really
turtles. Funny.
There's a book that I've been reading, Health and Welfare of Captive Reptiles. It's like a textbook that has some of the people that contribute to it are pretty hostile toward keepers. But I think it is a good perspective to have then, and to challenge what you're doing. Like, can I defend what I'm doing to these people, even if they're maybe using science with a slant to, for their agenda? And so there are parts of it that I've been, I get a little upset about. But a lot of it, some of it has opened my eyes and challenged me to do things to a different level and different standard. But yeah, it's good. I'm like 2/3 of the way through it, and it's a good one.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, that's cool. I started reading Discovering Snakes in Wild Places. It's Harvey Lillywhite's book, and kind of just his herping adventures kind of thing, encounters with wild reptiles. So I've only just started it, but it kind of has that tone of some of the older school books, the herping adventures, and so it's a fun one. I've enjoyed the first few chapters. So
nice,
good stuff. Yeah, too many good books out there.
Yeah,
I've got a lot that I still need to get through and read, but yeah, good stuff. Well, I guess that'll do it for us. Thanks for coming on, Bill. You want to throw your info out there again?
Yeah, sure. Creepers Herpetoculture is my Instagram, and that's really the best place to find me.
Okay, sounds good. All right, well, we'll thank the Morelia Pythons Radio Network. I'll put in another plug for Carpet Fest, August 12th, I believe, in Pennsylvania at Eric's house. Should be a good party. They just put up their Carpet Fest T-shirts on the Morelia Pythons Teespring store, and so even if you can't attend, you can buy a T-shirt and feel like you're part of the group. So check that out. But yeah, we're thankful to Eric and Owen and what they do and the network. So we'll catch you again next week for another episode of Reptile Fight Club.
I'm just kidding. We're leaving. Bye.